All right, well, tell me when we're live so that way I can do it like a little intro. As soon as you, and then that way I know, and then we'll. What's going on, guys? Welcome to, I guess, I wouldn't say the first episode because I've done a few of these, mostly through Zoom call because our lovely COVID of 2020. But now we're doing like live kind of guest kind of podcast. So just talking about stuff, fitness related stuff, combat related stuff, stuff that sciencey stuff. Hopefully we kind of build a bunch of different topics. As usual, if you guys can, if you've it's your first time kind of tuning into the show, subscribe, share this with somebody so that way we can kind of the algorithm will kind of favor us so that we can produce better and better episodes. Today we have Mr. Brian Betancourt. Am I saying your last name right?
Yeah.
Who's a master's in science. What's the master's actually in?
It's exercise physiology, sports science.
Okay, and what does that mean? Try to translate that for like the person that doesn't know anything
for
about
the
fitness.
average person, because I get that question a lot. Like, what the hell is an exercise physiologist? The layman's way is like, I'm just a really, really fancy personal trainer, right? Like
A fancy personal
really
trainer?
fancy personal trainer, because the only difference is like we know like medication interactions, we know how to stress test, how to do like a ramp protocol with like a blood pressure cuff. It was really mainly intended for like research and for like medically supervised exercise. People with like diabetes and then on the far spectrum like performance, and mainly you saw EPs with like cyclists and shit like that. But really any sport will work.
Okay, so what you're saying is it like you guys are just more on, like you said, the medical. So if someone's recovering from something, it's like you're still doing fitness, you're still doing the training, but you're a little bit more self-aware of like if they're taking medications or if they just had some type of heart whatever.
Yeah. You're like you're on the two spectrums. I don't want to like really bucket it to medical, but like on the medical side, like for my personal experience, for instance, right? I worked at Baptist Health, right, as like an EP there.
Okay.
And I worked in like a lifestyle modification program. So I'm working with people with type 2 diabetes, coronary artery disease, but they're not able to go work at like a commercial gym. Like you can't take these people to like an LA Fitness because they might have a heart attack at any point. So it's like,
gotcha.
You're monitoring them and giving them a program that's challenging enough for them to hopefully make gains, but also like not stress them out too much. But then you also see EPs on the other side because they're the ones who manage the metabolic carts. They read the data for like cyclists that are trying to do like the
that's
Tour
the
de
stuff
France
that's the
stuff
stuff that me as a trainer I find that shit fascinating as hell.
It's like in the beginning when you see it, you're like, oh man, this is super dope, and then like the hardest thing is like making it practical, right? Because it's very difficult to find that equipment outside of a lab. Now they've done a lot better about bringing, like, you have like Zephyr bands, you have mobile metabolic carts and stuff like that. But in the past that was always like a weird thing. It's like, oh, in the lab it works like that, but bringing it out into the field and doing it in practice is
I remember when they first started pushing the VO2 max testing for a little bit. Yeah. And I was like, I remember my buddy of mine that owned a personal training certification in LA. He was telling me that there was like an actual truck. It turned into a business. The guy, the truck would go from LA Fitness to LA Fitness, and they had like a monthly, get your VO2 max, and they would just go from LA Fitness to LA Fitness to kind of just test everybody there. I think it was like $25 or $50 or something mundane, and it was just a volume game. The average LA Fitness had like 20,000 members, so you figure, you catch like 10 or 20 of them, and then they like turned into a business. But in my mind, I was like, VO2, like they had the water tank, the whole like the body fat. They started doing like body fat water tank.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Hydrostatic weighing.
There you go. I couldn't think of that. Yeah. Which is like that's like super sciencey. That's when you're like, that's when you need to know like to the T exactly where you're at body fat wise and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So how long you've actually been doing that? You said you've been doing it. We were talking earlier. You said like 10 years?
So I've been doing like strength conditioning like 11, 12 years.
Okay.
Like on the strength and conditioning side, I've always kind of been involved. I was lucky enough to like kind of be mentored under like Jesus Gallo, like Ed Downs, Felix Flores, like these kind of like strength and conditioning coaches, like more like in the basketball, baseball, combat sports kind of realm.
Okay.
And I kind of snuck my way in there just asking if I could be an intern, when I knew nothing. And I worked for free for a little bit, and they hired me, and I've been
awesome
there ever since,
That's awesome. Explain to me, you named off a couple names, but I don't know the names.
So Ed Downs is the guy who used to train like Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh,
Okay.
Right now he's working with different college athletes. He consults and stuff, does like military contract work. Jesus Gallo was George Masvidal's old strength coach. He does Elio Topuria. He does a bunch of baseball players. He does a lot of like pro athletes. And then Felix Flores is the owner of the Miami Perimeter. He's like part owner of the Miami Perimeter, and he works with a lot of like professional athletes and stuff.
Right, because that's where you're working full time.
Yeah, I'm a director of sports performance there. Yeah.
Okay, Miami, and then tell everybody I don't know what that is. Well, because it's far from me. Because I'm on the beach and you're all the way down south.
Yeah, so the Miami Perimeter is like a facility, a sports performance facility that's really dedicated to working with youth and professional athletes, mainly in the realm of like basketball and volleyball.
Oh, cool.
And it's like a $500,000 facility. It's like really fucking nice.
And it's specifically for like the sports side, not just.
Yeah. Like we're really focused on more like skill development. Like we're really trying to like it's not just like strength conditioning. There's like a whole skill side to it. There's a treatment room.
Right.
It's like a really in-house trying to really create a strength conditioning program that is how a strength conditioning program should be done. You know, so. We'll see how that goes.
So actually, I'm kind of interested in that. I've noticed now, like, I'm working around a few different trainers now that are like kind of like what you do. Like one was a strength and conditioning coach for Ohio State football, stuff like that. When you say skilled training, what do you mean by skilled training compared? Because you're saying athletic training, but like it's like a combination of like you're working out. But it's also like it's specific for whatever sport you're doing. So kind of explain that because I'm not 100%.
Two different things. Not talking about the actual skill. So we do have a side that's the actual skill, like dribbling the ball, shooting the ball. So that kind of acquisition. The acquisition of the skill to perform the sport.
Okay.
But on the other side, and you've worked with athletes before too, right? You can get like a D1 athlete. You can get a professional athlete, and you'd be surprised that sometimes when they walk in the door to train, they can't fucking squat, right? Like you see them squat, and you're like, oh man, that's really shitty. You know, whether it's like an ankle mobility issue or a hip issue or just like this motor learning, like they just don't fucking squat because they didn't really work out. They just played basketball and they got really good at basketball, right?
Right.
So it's like from a foundational level too, right? Like understanding, oh, okay, like why load you with a barbell if you can't even squat in the beginning? Let's build the skill of squatting. Let's build the skill of whatever movement, a hip hinge, a hang, a climbing skill, whatever it is.
Yeah, so understanding the mechanics of the movement. Yeah.
And
Okay.
really like teaching and educating somebody and then working on like building all that stuff up.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Like a lot of people that are like anybody that does any repetitive motion, any sport, whether it's basketball, tennis, whatever it is, I feel like the better they get at the sport, the worse they get as a human.
The worse they get in the gym, right?
In other words, like a good example is like I was telling you earlier that I know Mario Sperry. Bro, the guy grabs you, he will crush your neck, but he can't lift his arm over his head.
Yeah.
It's like it's limited to that sport. And I tried helping him. He's an older cat, so he's sometimes a little bit like stubborn because in his mind he thinks more is better. So it's very difficult to kind of like with the older generation. Well, I'm saying older generation, it's kind of my generation, to be honest with you. They're kind of stuck in the ways. It's like, oh well, I don't do that. Like I don't stretch and So it's like one of those things. It's like what? Like you got to learn how to move better. Like the repetitive motion of
or just do less.
Or do less. But athletes that'll never happen.
Yeah, they don't believe in it. So the funny thing with that, and what you start to kind of realize is, there's this weird misconception that more is better, right? And if you look at it from just like a philosophical standpoint, stress plus stress equals
more stress.
More stress, right? So where's like the logic behind that? And in combat sports specifically, you see that, right? Like they fight, they're training like 6 hours a day, fighting like fucking animals, and then they're like, oh, I'm beat up, I'm banged up, but now I gotta go lift weights. And it's like they believe that, oh, now I have to do this strength conditioning component to be a better grappler, and they don't have anything to do with the other, right?
Yeah, like, one has nothing to do with the other.
You're gonna get better at grappling by grappling. You're gonna get better at basketball by playing basketball. You're gonna get better at all these things by doing that sport. So the strength conditioning side is not necessarily meant to be a job or to build mental toughness. No. You do that shit in your sport or whatever activity you do. What the strength conditioning side is meant to do, at least in my mind, is to aid you in recovery, aid you in understanding of your body, what's kind of fucking banged up, what's not, and how can we work to build something that's a little bit more resilient through recovery? Because that's the most important performance metric you can think of. If you feel like shit and you're going to go compete, you're going to compete like shit. If you feel fucking fresh and you go out there, you're going to perform.
Yeah, you're going to murder people. Right? You're going to murder people.
That's like my philosophy especially if I work with a combat athlete. Like, I really take into mind that, you're training like fucking 6 hours a day. Why are we out here doing fucking good mornings, posterior chain work, and fucking sprinting up fucking stadium stairs? It's just volume on top of volume. When are they gonna fucking recover?
Yeah, it doesn't make
sense.
Yeah, and I've seen. I saw when Faraz GSP's old.
Veer Zahabi.
Yeah, Veer Sahabi. I remember a few years back, Joe Rogan had him on his podcast, and he was talking about like the principle of not being sore. And in my mind, I came from, I'm old enough to where, like, back when the gym business was just a bunch of meatheads.
Yeah.
I was one of those meatheads, so I had that bodybuilding kind of mentality. Now that I've gotten older, I've like actually done like an actual sport. I've kind of like personally seen injuries outside of me learning more in my own field and stuff like that, working with, talking to people like you and stuff like that. I've noticed that like you want to try to do something every day. But it's like you said, it's like a skill-related movement. So are we going to work on agility today? So it's like, okay, we're taxing your nervous system. All right, cool. Now we're going to do 5 box jumps. I'm just keep throwing something out of the air. Now we're working explosiveness. And then the next day, okay, now we're going to do heavy deadlifts. Okay, cool.
Yeah, working on strength.
Yeah. The day after that, we're gonna do yoga class, which is still working out, but it's yoga. It's somewhat recovery. So I've noticed now that it's more about like a volume game with purpose, not just volume for volume purposes.
100%.
Yeah, like and that's where a lot, like you said, a lot of the combat sports guys they think it more is better. It's like, all right, I did an hour and a half of jiu-jitsu or whatever it is, and then I'm gonna go do an hour and a half of legs. You're like, what are you doing? Like, this is dumb.
Yeah. And I mean, more people are starting, I think, to get into the avenue and realize, like, oh shit, like even like MMA guys, if you see like Holloway fought last night and he won, and apparently the guy doesn't even spar that much anymore, right? Like he doesn't spar because he knows how much of a toll that takes on his body, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But the other thing, and you just mentioned like box jumps and deadlifting and yoga and working on like agility and taxing, I like to think of it from like just this very simple kind of metric, and it all comes from like George Hebert. So George Hebert, for those of you who don't know, is like the godfather of physical education from like 200 years ago, 100 years ago. Right?
Okay.
He wrote a series of texts called The Natural Method. And all he's saying is essentially like people just need to be able to lift shit. People need to be able to do like gymnastics kind of movements. They need to be able to work cooperatively against each other, and everybody should know how to fight. Right? So
those are the 4 principles.
That's all you fucking need to do. Now we fast forward, a guy like Erwin LaCour creates MoveNat, where he takes that whole system and he systemizes it.
Okay.
I went, like Cliff Note, I went and I did those 2 certifications. But it really shifted my mindset into going a full circle, because you start to realize it's not about necessarily the particular, like, oh, I'm box jumping, I'm about whether you can be efficient in whatever movement you're trying to do. Because all of those things, speed, power, strength, hypertrophy, recovery, all of them are a subsequent result of you practicing. None of those things matter inherently, right? Oh, I'm focusing on agility. No, focus on the wrong thing. Focus on doing the task that you're working agility on as efficiently as possible. Agility is going to improve. Because my agility isn't my ability to change direction. Agility is my ability to change direction in response to an external stimulus.
Right, which is your movement in the ground.
Exactly, right? So if you're doing jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Agility is not how quickly I can get from position to position. Agility is how quickly I can get to position and recognize, oh, I'm getting a collar choke. Oh, he's taking my back, he's sinking the arm. Oh, I gotta address this, right? And who's better is who's faster at making decisions.
Right.
Right?
So it's a lot of like brain power, more not just muscular power.
Yeah. Now, granted, if there's 2 of you and you both are equally as smart and you're both equally as good as making decisions, he probably gonna fucking win, right? Because fucking get your neck and fucking.
Well, and that goes down to like the example if you it's like wrestlers, it's like they've been there, done that. They understand the physical. It's the toughness part.
Bro, those guys can run through a wall.
Yeah.
And they don't give a fuck. Those guys are the toughest guys. It's the worst thing. Like you go to a jiu-jitsu, right? You go to jiu-jitsu.
It's true.
And it's like a laid back kind of fucking thing. You hang back, you hang out, and then they fucking bring in some guy,
and he just runs through people,
and he just tries to fucking run through people, and you're like, bro, I'm here for recreation, you know, like I'm just trying to fucking show up to work tomorrow without my neck fucking busted, and this guy's fucking double legging you and trying to dump you on your fucking head. Like we have a guy in my academy who's a fucking monster, you know, he's like a white belt, but he has such a strong wrestling base that it's just like, oh, this guy's a nightmare to deal with, you know. You know, and he's just because he's so explosive and so dynamic. Now, yeah, he makes mistakes here and there because he's just not aware of the submissions yet. But the moment any wrestler starts to understand those principles, they're a nightmare to deal with, right? Because, yeah, they have that mental toughness point already because they don't give a fuck. They'll run through a wall 80 times if that's going to get them the end result, you know? They don't care.
Yeah, 100%, man.
Wrestlers are the bingo. Jiu-jitsu guy's gonna be a little more like, not worth it. You're like, I'll get you tomorrow, not a big deal, you know. And then they fucking they're pretty chill. So it's just like two different like worth ethics.
That's funny. When you're dealing with that, like you said, you've dealt with MMA guys, right? You were telling me.
So currently, I've worked with Sydney Outlaw and Roman Feraldo.
Okay.
And mainly with Roman, I just do his mobility work, right? Like he just comes in and we just do like 30 minutes to an hour of mobility work right before he goes in to do his striking session.
Right.
He's really kind of takes care of his own strength conditioning and probably other guy who deals with like the lifting aspect of it. You know?
Yeah, actually, let me think of that. I think of that particular situation. So this is another thing that people don't understand. They think stretching is to stretch. Yeah. But stretching is not. Yeah. Like mobility and stretching is not really to stretch. It is, but then it isn't. Like the way it sounds like the way you're doing it is, it's almost as if you're opening up the range of motion of the joint structure, whatever it is that he's working on, and then you go do the striking, and then that way, whatever movement that he planned on doing, he's gonna get a little bit more out of it because of the fact that he worked 35, 45 minutes of mobility.
The goal is he should feel kind of like a weight, right? I mean, the way I look at mobility training is, well, mobility first is how much strength you have in a range of motion, right?
Right.
You can only get to a certain end range because your body understands, oh, I'm safe here.
Right.
If it doesn't perceive you're safe, if there's no perceived safety there, it's gonna be like, fuck that, don't even get over there, right? So it's just like the anti like dumb button, like, hey, let's not fucking play games.
Right. Okay.
So with him, it's just whatever he feels like he needs to work on. Like, yo, my ankles feel a little stiff. Let's just fucking get that. And a lot of it is just trying to ingrain this idea into his own brain, like, oh, I can be here safely, comfortably, and then master that position, right? So it's being efficient in those places. So that's really the idea.
Yeah. And that's a thought process that is difficult for a lot of people because, again, I go back to they think more is better. Like, oh, my ankle's stiff. Oh, I just gotta warm up long. I gotta warm up more.
The other thing too is like the perception or idea of this thing, right? Like if you look at like mobility movements, they look easy. Like if somebody looks at them, they're like, that ain't shit. You know, to get down into like a deep knee bend and fucking just roll my ankle from fucking fat toe to pinky toe. They look at that shit and they're like, it's nothing. Until they get down and they realize, oh fuck, I can't even put my knee over my toe without my heel coming fucking halfway off the fucking ground.
Yeah,
right?
I have like no ankle
So
motion.
there's like this stigma. I'll tell you a quick funny anecdote, and I don't mean to take a fuck ton of time, but I used to be a manager at an Equinox, right? Years ago. And I had these two trainers. One of them was a master instructor for animal flow, right?
Okay.
And he always kind of got the shit for being the animal flow guy, right? He's there on the fucking ground, crawling, fucking monkeying, fucking handstanding,
doing all that crazy movement,
transition, doing all that crazy movement, right? And then we had another guy who was a trainer who was a big, like, CrossFit country boy. I mean, like, fucking 5'11", 220, 8% body fat.
Just a gorilla.
Just a fucking gorilla, right? Like, corn-fed fucking gorilla. And him and the animal flag used to always like kind of like joke around and like talk shit. And one day he said something like, bro, this isn't fucking animal flow or some shit like that. And I remember the animal flow guy was just like, you know what, bro? Let's just see like who the fuck is actually really that strong. And he fucking grabs like a 70-pound kettlebell. And this is not a big dude, bro. He's probably like around your size.
Right.
And he grabs like a fucking kettlebell. I mean, obviously bigger than me. Grabs a kettlebell and he just strict presses like fucking 70 pounds like it's like nothing. Wow, and then just brings it right back down and then hands it to the CrossFit guy.
And goes lift it.
And when he goes to press it, it's like this fucking like, this like weird like, thoracic extension, kind of like dip a little bit, struggle to this, and then I can clean it up. And then he like puts it down and he's like, fuck you, man. I did like arms, so I'm a little sore. So then whatever, they go to deadlift, they go to squat, they go to bench. And the animal flow guy, when you go and you look at it, like, that motherfucker was probably stronger pound for pound. And then after they deadlifted and after they squatted and after they benched, he goes, all right, so now it's your turn to do something that I do. And he fucking goes into a handstand and he just fucking walks across the gym in a handstand and then just fucking comes back down. And the other guy couldn't do that shit. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, there's something to it. Yeah. So I hired my own employee to personally train a little bit. And that's how I got really, really into like the movement shit. Really? And I started to realize, this makes infinitely more sense than fucking like this weird dogma of, you got to deadlift, you got to back squat, you got to bench, you got to press. You see any of those fucking powerlifter guys? They barely fucking move.
Yeah, they're
Put
moving.
them on the floor, ask them to get up off the ground. They fucking struggle. It's like watching a fucking turtle on like a shell and backwards. And it's like, may be able to squat, bench, or deadlift 600 pounds, pero no importa. You can't get off the fucking ground. And then that becomes even more inherently like obvious when you go into something like grappling. You get these fucking guys that come in that do CrossFit, they back squat, they bench, they do whatever, they're fucking animals. They still get armbarred, they still get choked, and generally by somebody who they outweigh by 60 pounds.
It's true.
And they get mangled.
Right.
And then they're sitting there confused as the fuck, I can lift all this weight. And that's when you just, it's inherent. Like, it doesn't fucking matter how strong you are if you don't know what the fuck you're doing on the mat. Right. But the opposite is true. You can know all you know on the mat, but you may not understand how to train appropriately outside the mat because you just don't have the knowledge.
Right. And that's where I feel like at least the grappling, the jiu-jitsu side is behind a little bit. They haven't figured that out yet. Yeah. And it's because it hasn't been organized sport now for a while. You know, like you watch like a lot of the stuff that we're talking about now. My boy Sebastian, he's like, oh yeah, we did all that stuff because he was a D2 basketball player. Yeah. So all it's organized sports. So you get guys like you, everybody that is like understands how movement works. Yeah,
it's like an organized strength.
Yeah, it's an organized strength and conditioning, even though it's like kind of cookie cut for the whole team to some extent.
Yeah, no, usually.
Yeah. Unless it's like a star player that they're kind of like giving a little bit of love.
Sometimes you go into a college strength room and like everybody's lifting the same fucking weight. Like, oh, you're gonna deadlift. I'm just setting up a deadlift, and obviously it depends on the coach. It shouldn't be like that. But oh, we're all gonna deadlift the same fucking weight, and it's like, how? One guy's
6'5",
6'5", 180. Another guy is 6'8". Like they don't have the same joint angles. They're lifting from the same height, and then evidently somebody gets fucked.
Yeah.
But you see that. But the thing with jiu-jitsu, and in all honesty, it almost there's like a point to where it doesn't matter like how you really lift that much. Because I mean, look at somebody like Gordon Ryan. He doesn't look like he does any fucking movement training, and that guy destroys people. He trains like a fucking bodybuilder. He's to the gills. Right? Yeah. And that's just inherent in the sport. I mean, if you look at those USADA things that just happened in December, 5 people got fucking busted for fucking performance drugs. But it's a non-tested organization, right?
Right.
So like everybody's doing it. So
apparently Gordon Ryan, this is according to Danaher, his coach, apparently his ability to do isometric contraction is unreal.
Dude, the guy's a freak.
Yeah, apparently that's what Danaher says that his special skill is that his special skill is that he's able to hold an isometric contraction forever. Doesn't get tired. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why he says that he thinks he does so well outside of him being, an athlete and, super dedicated. All that other stuff is very important as well. Yeah. But one of his like natural gifts is that the guy's just able to squeeze and hold the squeeze.
And he trains probably harder than anybody, and he retains information better than everybody, and that's literally why he's like the best guy.
Yeah. And I remember having this discussion with a black belt that I used to train with up in New York. He told me that he's like, bro, the guy just studies. And then my current coach, they did I don't know if it was in 2017 or 16. I'm not sure what year it was. But Gordon Ryan came, and it was actually a whole camp. It was him. All the top guys. Like, off the top of my head, I can't remember all their names. But my coach even said, he's like, dude, the only person that showed up to every workout, was Gordon Ryan.
Yeah. That guy.
He's like, he was there. They were doing 2 a day. There in the morning, he was there in the afternoon. He did not speak. You would tell him to do something. He'd look and go, okay.
Yeah, his work ethic is real. So now here's the thing, though. People are like, oh, I'm gonna train just like Gordon Ryan. It's like, how the fuck do you expect to train at like the top 1% of the echelon that he trains?
Yeah, it's true.
You probably need to be doing something else for you, right? Like training is specific to you,
the individual.
And then when you think about that, like in the grand scheme of things, you still should just be training things that make sense, right? Like it isn't like you're a guy who's average level jiu-jitsu, and then you're gonna go crush yourself at the gym, fucking doing bicep curls and hamstring fucking curls and shit like that, like a bodybuilder.
Yeah,
kill yourself with high volume, get back to the gym and just realize, oh, I'm getting fucking mangled because I'm fucking exhausted because you just can't handle the same workload.
How do the MMA guys do it? Because right now the MMA guys have gotten pretty good at, outside of, they're probably on the sauce, probably some of them, so some of them are on the sauce. Well, outside of that, how is it that, because you see it, where you see it? You know who Mackenzie Dern is, right?
Yeah.
You saw her when she competed. She was like almost every woman. She was soft. You could tell she was fit, but soft. And within 6 months of her transitioning to MMA, she's not soft no more. She's gained like a good 5. Yeah, she's gained a good 5 or 10 pounds of muscle. And then I heard, we were talking about earlier, the fight dietitian guy, and he was telling me that, or he was saying, he was chatting with, he was saying, he's like, the MMA guys, at least they follow directions. He's like, there's enough now athletic trainers, there's enough now where it's like they understand. They just go, okay, what do you want me to do? You want me to lift today? Okay. You want me to do yoga today? Okay. You want me to go to do sauna? Okay.
I think it's because more organized.
That's it. That's all.
It's more organized because in MMA you have a team. And that team kind of dictates what's happening, right? Like you have your dietitian, you have your strength coach, at least in the higher ends.
The bigger guys.
Israel Adesanya, Volkanovski.
Right. Yeah, when you're actually doing like actual camps.
Yeah, like when you're high, you're like a 14-week camp. Everything is kind of dictated for you. You got your striking coach. You know when you're going to go to wrestling. Everything is kind of scheduled out.
Right.
You know, so they're like way more organized. Versus the average jiu-jitsu athlete knows when he has class, but he's responsible for his own strength and conditioning work, right? He doesn't have anybody to guide him generally. Like the majority of them are training themselves.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. Like I've noticed, like they're in the well, it's because like I said, the sport is still relatively new. It hasn't been around so long, but there's no season, so there's like
it's 365.
It's 365. Like one of my friends, he's an active competitor, and we're talking about that. I'm like, man, how do you prep? Like it's like there's no real unless you pick like 1 or 2 events a year that you're gonna do. Like these are the ones no matter what. Then you can create your own season, but there is no actual season.
Well, now you can create a camp. So with my jiu-jitsu athlete that I work with, like we ask, what events do you have?
Okay.
At least like 8 weeks out.
Okay.
Right, and we schedule them out, and we know, you got Jiu-Jitsu World League yesterday. You got whatever Pans Worlds, whatever on these days. You're periodizing, right? So now it's my job, right, to organize like how we're gonna train to that event.
Right.
And that's where people miss. Now, a lot of the jiu-jitsu athletes, they just compete all the fucking time.
Right.
And if that's the case, you just got to do less, right? You don't do more strength conditioning, you do less strength conditioning, right? Because you have too many competitions. You want to go to the competitions relatively recovered. Now you have the other idea of, these competitions don't matter to me as much, so I don't really care how I feel going into them.
So if I win or lose, obviously I want to win, but
it's just to get the experience of competing and being in that mindset.
Okay.
But these competitions, I'm really focusing on trying to win. So then taper less here, work harder here. And you figure out all that kind of stuff. So
gotcha.
I think though that's really again, it goes back to doing less. So the problem with a lot of strength conditioning coaches is they treat the gym like it's the athlete's fucking job. Right? Like they're like, you got to come here, you got to fucking lift, we got to make fucking crazy progress on how strong you get. Like you have a 200-pound deadlift, I want you to have like a 270-pound deadlift in like fucking 4 or 5 months or whatever the fuck the case might be. And it's like the volume you're going to put this guy through is going to impact how they train on the mat.
Which is what they're training for.
Exactly. So why the fuck would I train harder in the gym when it's going to sacrifice my mat time? Because eventually the means aren't going to, they're not going to justify it.
And I think that's what happens with a lot of the jiu-jitsu guys. A lot of the jiu-jitsu guys stop lifting.
Yeah.
They just don't lift.
Because it makes more sense to just do more jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Right? Because they can't find a happy medium. I've talked to a couple of jiu-jitsu athletes or even wrestlers that are like, I always felt beat up. My neck always fucking felt mangled. My back was always fucking sore. Me always fucking hurt. And it was like, what were you doing? I was doing CrossFit or fucking wrestling. Oh, okay, yeah, that'll fucking do it to you, right? Or like, I know an athlete that was working with somebody who, on a Friday, they're in a field, right, running 400-meter repeats, or doing the stairs of a fucking stadium in the fucking sun at like 2-3 o'clock in fucking Florida.
Jesus.
And then they gotta go practice at night.
That's just
judo.
What?
Have you seen a judo practice?
Yeah.
They're fucking throwing each other.
Have you ever met a judo brown belt? Jesus Christ, they're all banged up.
Yeah, they're all fucking beat up. So how does that make sense? Like, you're gonna, like, if you're the strength and conditioning coach, why would I make you come on a Friday and do that shit in the sun when you're not gonna recover in time to go to your practice at night, right? It's conditioning work. It's gonna make them in better shape. No. Let's figure something out. Put it on a different day, right? Or just change the conditioning entirely to something that's gonna be adequate.
Right.
And that's the thing.
And I'm glad. Listen, man, I'm glad that people like you are now getting into the grappling world because like I said, it was Craig Jones said it when he was talking with the fight dietitian guy. He was just saying that because of the fact that jiu-jitsu predominantly comes from Brazil, You know, you got the favela guys, bro. You know, the guys that came from Brazil, and they're basically what we were here in the '90s when I was coming up in fitness. It was just all meatheads. It was all like more is better. Don't be a pussy.
Yeah,
You know, that type of vibe. They think that 2-a-days is you have to do 2-a-days. You're like, no, you don't. Yeah. No, you don't.
Yeah, you really don't. Less is like, honestly, look, I work with my athletes, and you know, I test their one max squat, whatever the lift may be, and I can show you. I can even pull it up on my phone and show you that they've all gotten stronger, and we deadlift less, we squat less. I probably squat them maybe 9 week blocks out of the year, multiple times a year, but 9 weeks. 9 weeks we're gonna focus on the squat. We're gonna take a break from the squat entirely. We're gonna deadlift. We're still squatting. We're just not doing like a barbell front squat, fucking 365 days a year. You know why? Because they're not fucking powerlifting.
Yeah,
right?
That makes no sense.
They're not fucking powerlifting, right? Their job is to go choke somebody. You know, not fucking lift as much as they can off the ground. So what's the it's not worth the risk, you know?
Yeah, 100%. That's another thing too. That's one thing that changed my paradigm just recently. Again, talking to people like you and stuff like that, it's again they have this stigma that like the squats and deadlift are like the end all be all. It's like no, they're not. Like
they're important.
They're important,
but it's not gonna make or break how good you are at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, nah.
Because you can deadlift 400 pounds and still get choked.
Yeah.
You know, look, the biggest thing for me is I'm trying to expose my athletes to as many movements as possible to give them the largest amount of what's called degrees of freedom, right? So the idea is movements linked to each other, right? So if let's look at a Turkish getup, right? Okay. And let's take away the fucking kettlebell for a second.
Okay.
The elbow roll up, right? To then the low sweep into that half kneel, and then the split squat to get up.
Okay.
If you think about every movement that happens in the get up, think about how many times you've been put in side control.
Same thing.
Immediately, as soon as I said it, you were like, fuck, same thing. Exactly, right? Elbow roll up, basing, putting my hand out, right?
Right.
And you can stand up on a single, right? Like a side bend get up, like getting up from here, right? Bam, and popping up, coming up on a single. Right? All of those things, like, they do while grabbing somebody. Do it outside of grabbing, and it's weird how they start to correlate. They're like, oh shit, this is what I do when I grab somebody, because they're not inherently aware that these two things are connected.
Yeah. They're not understanding their own movement. They're
doing jiu-jitsu.
They're doing jiu-jitsu, yeah.
Right? And then you realize, oh, this shit can happen without me having to strangle somebody. And then there's this connect the dots moment that takes a little bit, where they're like, coño, on my back, this perception or this idea of support and how my body moves, yo, this is what happens to me on the mat. And I'm not saying that's going to inherently make them better at jiu-jitsu, because that's the biggest misconception in strength conditioning is, I make you better at your sport. No, you make yourself better at your sport by doing your sport. What I do is improve performance variables. I can make you jump higher. I can make you stronger. I can make you run faster. But if you played football, I can make you catch a ball better. That's you.
That's you. That's your skill. Yeah,
that's 100%. And that's evident like in any sport. Like, I don't make you better at your sport. I make the variables that could potentially make you better at your sport, I can improve them. But I can't make you a fucking winner. Like, if you're a jiu-jitsu guy who always gets caught by a fucking head and arm choke,
that's on you.
And I make you better at fucking deadlifting, you start with me, you're doing 200 pounds. By the time you're done with me, you're doing 315. Guess what? You're still getting head and arm choke. What's the problem? That deadlift? No, right? Your awareness of the fucking head and arm choke. So that's the big like lie in strength and conditioning. Oh, I'm gonna fucking make you better at your sport. No. You're gonna make them potentially better athletes.
Yeah, right? And I actually look at it. It's not even. I look at it. Make them a better human, and by making them a better human, if they have any type of ability for their sport, their ability will be then affected in a positive nature. Yes. That's the way I look at it, because I've noticed now, like with training enough people myself, and then me now doing jiu-jitsu for a while, I'm noticing it's the repetitive pattern in one direction. Because any sport, you're going in one direction. Whether you're playing tennis,
except combat sports,
to some extent.
Yeah, left dominant.
Right, but what I'm talking about is grappling. Grappling is a little bit more just a lot of flex. Everything's flex. Everything's in, because that's how you protect yourself. Where it's like, yeah, that's great to protect yourself, but like that, you don't get out of a car like that. You You know what I'm saying? And that's where you get with the old school black belts that are like that.
You just brought up a really interesting point that I didn't think of, that idea of like that internal torque, right? Like I'm just like fucking constantly here.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why they get these kind of ideas. But what I'm saying is fighting is such a natural that we've done for fucking eons since we've evolved as fucking human beings.
Right.
We never fucking hunted an animal playing tennis. Is what I'm getting at, right? Like tennis is not a natural.
That's a good way of thinking about it. Yeah.
Neither is basketball, right? Which is why they have so many asymmetrical injuries, right? Like these overuse injuries. Jiu-jitsu, you don't inherently get an overuse injury unless you're grabbing the gi. You know, you might get some joint injuries and shit like that. But the injuries you get from jiu-jitsu are you didn't tap quick enough.
Yeah.
They're acute and they kind of just fucking add up. Like right now, my fucking neck is miserable because I got fucking darced yesterday. No, 2 days ago. I got darced like fucking 6 times.
Right.
You know, so fucking getting that neck cranked, I'm a little sore.
Right.
You know? But the idea of grappling is a very natural kind of movement, right? It's something we're designed to fucking do. Like our body is designed to do that shit.
We're designed to basically fight each other. It sounds crazy, but it's kind of true.
Or whether to protect food, but
protect food or kill thy neighbor,
or kill the guy so you can bang a chick. You know, like that's the whole thing. So you can bang a chick. So
you can bang a chick. I like that.
That's
you got to reap the rewards.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. But like when you think about the other stuff, football, basketball, no, we're able to do that because our brain grew fast enough that you have a fridge that's full of food. You don't have to go out and hunt anybody, right? So we live this very nice life with air conditioning, and we play football to play football. We can do it because we want to. There's no fucking gorilla out in the wild playing basketball. A gorilla fucking eats, it fights, and it fucks. That's it. And that's what we did millions of years ago, right? Damn. So jiu-jitsu is just an evolution of that,
bro.
Right?
EFF, baby.
Dude, one of
fights and fucks.
Look, a preponderance of evidence. Like, if you look at any grappling art that's like a very thorough grappling art, any striking art,
right?
Muay Thai, boxing, left way, kickboxing, karate, whatever. What do they all have? A jab. They all have a straight cross, right? A variation of it.
Yeah, some variation of it.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Fucking Thai boxing is in that fucking area of Thailand, Burma, all those countries. Boxing, Europe, States. Those two places never really got together.
So
somebody in fucking, you know, like a European country was like, damn, this is a great tool to use.
Right.
And some other fucking cocksucker in Thailand who never met the guy in Europe was like, damn, this is a fucking great tool to use. Think about how perfect those movements are. That people in different parts of the world at different times all came to the same conclusion without ever meeting each other.
Well, I never really thought about it.
Preponderance of evidence.
That's actually very, very true.
And the same thing in grappling. You got a double leg in judo. You got a double leg in wrestling, right?
Yeah.
You got a hip toss in wrestling. You got a hip toss in judo. You got a single leg. You got all these movements that are pretty much the same fucking thing. Even like control positions and pins are the same, and people that have never met. Now, when you look at historically, yes, Japanese, they scattered around. They went to Brazil. They taught all these things, but you still had like luta libre and shit like that was doing it probably without ever encountering anybody.
Right. In other words, the basic framework has been there, and you know, until within the last like 50 years, people didn't talk each other the way they talk each other now.
Yeah.
So how did they come to that?
Yeah.
It's basically been just built into who we are.
It's ingrained in our fucking DNA.
Yeah.
Right. And it's my argument for the gym at all the time. And I'm not telling people not to go to the gym. I think it's important that you go to the gym. But it's that you don't see anything other than a human being at the gym. When the fuck do you see a chimp benching? And a chimp will grab you by, have you seen the video of the guy like in the cage and he walks up to the chimp and it fucking grabs him? Like collar grabs him and brings him up, and the guy's trying to like break the grip and he can't, and then it grabs him by his ankle with like his foot and then grabs him again and just pull him in, and the chimp is like fucking like 10 times stronger than we are.
Yeah.
This guy's gonna have a miserable fucking time, and it's like, the chimp doesn't go to the gym.
He doesn't go to the gym. He just hangs out.
He just hangs out on a tree. And he deadlifts more than both of us. And he deadlifts more than both of us, you know? And it's just like that shit. And honestly, the first time I heard that was they did an interview with Erwin LaCour, and they asked him, he did something for like Men's Health. It was like the workout that the world forgot. And it's like this guy just running outside, lifting fucking rocks, swinging through trees, like shit like that. And some guy's like, you know, why? And he goes, have you ever seen an out-of-shape eagle? Or an out-of-shape fish, or an out-of-shape lion, or an out-of-shape monkey? In a zoo, but not out in the wild, right? They're never fucking out of shape. Why? Because they do what they're designed to do. What are we designed to do? We're designed to live shit. We're designed to fight. We're designed to work together. We're designed to just do that. And doing that, and that's what goes back to what I said earlier, just doing that alone will make you stronger, will make you more agile, will make you, put on size goals, because that is a result of you practicing how you were designed to fucking move. Versus the other way around. I'm gonna go to the gym and focus on.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
It's like you've limited yourself to this one idea. Versus if you just did everything, you can reap all the benefits.
Yeah, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that this guy that was GSP's coach was talking about the believing in like not ever really being sore. Like you need to do movement so consistently and so often that it's just what you do. It's not like, oh, I'm trying to do like my max. It's like, why? Like it doesn't make any sense. And the example he gave, which was phenomenal, which was like you go and let's say you go and bench, I don't know, once a week, but you're max lifting. Let's say you're max lifting and you're doing like sets of like 5 sets of like 3. And this is him saying that. He goes, by the end of the week, you did 15 reps. I'm not going to do 80, 90% of my max. I'm going to do
60%.
I'm going to do 60%.
55%,
yeah, 55, 60%. But I'm going to do 10 sets of 10 every day. Yeah. At the end of the month, or at the end of the week, I've done, how do you call it, 700 reps. You've done 15. Who do you think is going to be stronger in the long run? Over time, it's just a volume.
There's like, if you look at like the NSCA, like when I was studying all this stuff in school, and if you look at like the CSCS manual, right, they got like this fucking graph that is it's like a line of different numbers, 1 to 20.
Okay.
And then each part of the graph is like color coded, like a little yellow here, a lot of yellow here. It's got blue in the background, a little red in the beginning, and each one's highlighted. It says strength, endurance range, right? You're probably aware.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
all that shit's a myth too, because when you look at the graph in its entirety, they all overlap, right? Hypertrophy and power overlap, strength and hypertrophy overlap, endurance overlaps all of them, right? And then you go, oh, but it's the intensity at which you work at. What you start to realize is my 1 rep max is my ability to express my strength. That one day, because of how I felt. If I slept really fucking good, I felt really fucking strong, I could probably lift more than if I tried that the exact same way, I just didn't sleep as good, probably lift a little less. Am I capable of lifting more? Yeah. Not everything was in line, right? So maximal strength, it's important to do because you need to be able to express that. You need to be able to do that. And again, it's perceived safety, right? It's teaching your body that I can lift 400 pounds without breaking, right? But then you have the extremes. What's the rate of return on that? If I did 400 pounds all the fucking time, think about all those muscles that have to work, all those muscles that have to become overactive. You know that saying of tone and relax? Like, you know how you can grab somebody and like if you grab somebody, they feel fucking just like if they popped a Viagra. They just feel fucking like, right? Like vasodilated to the tits. And you're like, dude, why are you so stressed? Right? They just feel stressed. You know, like you grab me, you're like, damn, you're a strong motherfucker, but you're just like
constant stress
all the fucking time, just like this fucking
just a big ball of tension.
And it's nervous system, right? It's like this overactive fucking nervous system that but what does that restrict? Your ability to move fluidly in different places. You're really fucking explosive, but you're fucking tense. So different positions are gonna be weird. And then you got the opposite people that feel like supple and soft, and you're like, this guy ain't shit. And then he fucking grabs you, and you're like, oh fuck, it's a grown man. He's very strong. Why? Right? And that guy's just a little bit more relaxed. Maybe doesn't have the ability to express the strength as the other guy does inherently one time.
Right.
But he can move better, and he's stronger all the time.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Okay. You know what I mean? Yeah. Wow, I never really thought. How do you deal with diet though with those guys?
I don't take care of the nutrition component at all, right?
Zero.
I'll give them some recommendations, but that's not my job.
Okay.
I'm a firm believer that everybody's got a job to do. So if somebody asks me about diet, I refer them to a dietitian. I'm like, I'm not here to tell you how to cut weight. There's somebody who went to school and did the job way better than I do.
Knows how to do it.
So just go to that person.
Yeah, I'm kind of along the same lines, man. When people ask me about diet, I tell them I can teach you the basics, but you got to make those decisions by yourself,
at the end of the day,
or go see somebody that is specialized.
That's what they do, right? Like, I don't expect the guy who studied only nutrition to tell you how to exercise. You shouldn't expect me, who all I studied was movement, exercise, and physiology, to tell you how to eat, bro. There's somebody who does that job and has experience and will take care of you. And that's what I try and do. I form a team around my athletes Hey, it's the dietitian that's what I'm gonna work with. Or they come to me, hey, I hurt my shoulder. I'm not a fucking physical therapist, bro. Like, I'll give you some exercises and I'll work alongside a physical therapist, but I'm not here to massage your shoulder. Like, that's not my job.
Right. You're not there to do therapy. You're there to compliment the therapist.
So I have a PT. So when I have a PT, so one of my athletes, I started working with him the day after he tore his LCL. Right? He tore his LCL grappling. Fucking literally, he walked up to me and he said, hey, I got to talk to you today. And I said, yeah, man, let's talk. He went to go grapple. Bam! You heard that shit pop in the gym. And I was like, fuck. You know, talk to him. And he's like, dude, I was literally going to ask you to start training. And I just fucking tore my LCL. I said, don't worry about it. I know a PT. Put him in touch with the PT. The PT examined him. Grade 1. Hey, let's do BFR. Let's take him through these protocols. Brian, I trust you to do the exercises. These are recommendations. Keep me posted. So he went to the PT for the manual work. I gave him the exercise. Back, fought.
Good for him.
With a flying knee. One with a flying knee. So it's like, you know, like you can't.
That's amazing, man.
Everybody has a fucking job. Like I'm not here to wear a bunch of hats, bro. I'm here to do my job really, really fucking well.
And that's good that you guys have that place. You guys have those resources for a lot of people, because most places don't, man. Like even like you said, you worked at Equinox. I work at Equinox, and you know I train people there. And we're all good trainers. All of us know what we're doing. But that's the part that we don't have. It's like, why is it that we don't have a resource for a physical therapist or a resource for like a registered dietitian? It's like we should. It's like we're charging the clientele like an arm and a leg.
You should have access. Like that component finishes it off.
Yeah, exactly. In other words, because everyone, it's life. Everyone, even people that are not athletes, are gonna like, oh, I twisted my ankle, or I was horseback riding, I went skiing, or something like that. That I basically blew out my knee, you know. And then it's like, all right, cool. It's like, all right, well, go figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, sorry to hear that. I hope you have insurance.
I'll give you some stuff that I hope you have. I mean, at the end of the day, like when you look at all that stuff, you're touching on like the wellness side aspect of it, right? Like,
right.
Like where it's like nutrition's 80% of it, movement's 20%, mindset's 100% of it, right? Like mindset makes the totality, because it's a lot of the nutrition aspect is the psychology behind how, like it's all behavior kind of based stuff, which is like a different topic entirely. And then the other half of it is education, right? Like the out of shape vegan. Vegan, like somebody who's like, oh, I'm vegan, and they automatically think they're healthy, and all they eat is processed food, right? They don't eat anything like their meal isn't like, if you're vegan, their meal isn't fucking kale with beans and mushrooms. Like it's not like one of those wellness bowls. It's like, yo, what are you eating today? I got this fucking vegan cupcake and some Oreos. It's like, okay, right? It's an education problem at that standpoint, right? They just eat poorly because they think, oh, I follow this specific idea, I'm eating healthy. No, it's retarded. You know, like.
Yeah. It's like you said. It goes back to the wellness thing. It's like they're trying to cheat the system instead of realizing that you got to have all the right like people in order for you to have the greatest success. And that's where, again, I go back to where the jiu-jitsu sport is like not as organized as MMA. MMA is a little bit more organized, to where, again, I would say, bro, only a small percentage of the guys lift weights. They don't really lift anything heavy. Only a small percentage of them do like mobility work, except for like the high-level guys. Even the high-level guys, they're limber or flexible or mobile or whatever you want to call it.
Sometimes they're stiff as fuck. They're still monsters.
Right. But most of them, it's because they learned that movement when they were kids. So in other words, like I see the difference. I don't know if you've noticed it, but I see it because I've seen some of the high-level jiu-jitsu guys that are like, you know, in their early 20s, 20, 21, like 19, but they started when they were 12. It's like, yo, like, come on, man. Like this, I train with this guy, Tractor, Vinicius, whatever. The guy's 240, but the guy does the splits like, and I'm talking like splits, not like, oh, I'm flexible. No, like I'm limber. And I have control over my it's literal mobility.
Perceived safety.
Perceived safety, yeah, strong. But like it throws you off because it's like, how are you big? And I even asked him, I'm like, oh, did you do it? He's like, no, I just been doing jiu-jitsu.
I always move.
Yeah, I've been doing exactly.
I always move.
Yeah.
Now grab a 28-year-old guy who just starts jiu-jitsu.
All limited.
Super limited, but invert, because there's a range of motion and passive range of motion, right?
Right.
I can take myself somewhere comfortably. It's different when somebody's fucking smashing me into that position. So a lot of it becomes like this masked like skill thing. Like, oh, I can eat this position. I can't be there, right? So you get some dudes that are like, they jiu-jitsu, and they can be in a position like while they do jiu-jitsu. Take them out of doing jiu-jitsu and put them in the, they can't be there. And you're like, well, how the fuck? Well, it's because they had a 200-pound man on top of them, crushing them into that position. And that's why they're always like, back is lit up, my fucking neck hurts.
Well, I had that problem because I was very, I didn't have any type of flexibility, and I was heavy, so I got super flexible. And then when I got super flexible, what ended up happening is that I was able to then, like my leg would go almost behind my head. The problem with that is exactly what you just said. I weigh 200 pounds, so most of the guys that I train with are between like 180 and like 230. When a 200-pound guy, it's uncomfortable. Yeah. And so what was happening was my leg was able to do it, but the force had to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Force had to go somewhere. And so all of a sudden I'm like,
lumbar locked, baby.
Yeah,
lumbar locked.
Exactly. So in my mind I was like, yo, why is my back bothering me? And it was just I had to put out for a little while, and then I toned it back tremendously. Then I started working on mobility, which is active range of motion. Okay, this is better. So I'm not nearly as limber, not nearly as flexible.
You can get there without taking a fucking punishment.
Without taking punishment. Because then all of a sudden, it was like I was after I'd done heavy training, I get up and I'm like, oh my God, I can't fucking move.
No, dude, there's nothing like
it's the worst.
Like me, like I'm only 135 pounds. There's nobody in my gym 135 pounds. So I only grapple 155, 160, 200, 180, whatever. Everybody outweighs me by like 30 pounds.
Right. Everybody's bigger than me.
So I come out feeling like a sandwich being made at Subway. And somebody would just like run that shit through the garden. You know, like fucking put everything on it, fucking toast that shit, come out and you're fucking flat and destroyed. Right? So that's, and I'm pretty mobile. Like I could be really well on the floor, but you know, I have my issues. You know, I've been in a car accident, so my back's already kind of banged up. So you feel like issues here and there, and it just comes down to like, you know, you just got to learn to maybe sometimes avoid positions or listen to your body. Maybe not train that fucking day, right? If you're really fucking banged up, maybe you got to, or just drill. Not train completely, but go drill a little bit and then avoid the craving of rolling.
Yeah, that's another another thing too that a lot of the combat sports guys is the addiction of the high that you get from training. It's like sometimes they don't want to listen to the body, especially when they're younger too. You know, and I remember when I was 21, man. It's like your ego, I wouldn't say it is ego, but like it's your testosterone, man. You just want to smash. You're like. You want to get punched in the face. I remember when I was doing a lot of striking, there's like a point where you almost get like, I wouldn't say aroused, but like excited when someone punches you in the face. Because you just go, they punch you in the face and you go, that's it? And then you're like, oh, I could eat this punch. I'm gonna crush this guy's face. And so, and that's the mindset that a lot of the grapplers have. But then what ends up happening is that they overdo it.
And you get banged up.
And then you get banged up, and then you get hurt, and then you get injured. And that's where, like now that I've been doing jiu-jitsu long enough now, not that the actual rolling is important, but it's not nearly as important as it used to be. Because it goes back to what you said at the very beginning. It's a skill set. And so like now, I would say I train right now between 4 and 6 days a week. I would say it's only one day where I do
like hard rolls.
Just hard rolls.
Yeah.
The other 4 or 5 days, I'm doing drilling, I'm taking class, and if I do situational, it's a specific situation where I'm doing a max of 2 minutes, and I'm picking the person who I'm going with.
Yeah, you have to have good partners, right? Yeah. Down to my coach telling me you always have to have 3 partners. You have to have one that you can just crush. I have one even with.
Right.
And then you have to have one that kills you. Right? You have to have one that just fucking manhandles you, because that's how you learn, right?
That's
you learn to fucking get out. So for me, I feel like from my own perspective, I feel like I always learn more from like flow rolling, and I mean like actual flow rolling, not the guy at the gym who's like, yo, you want to foam roll, and then you fucking double legs, like actual, like you're just gliding and moving into positions, catch and release, right? Catch a sub, you let it go, you just keep going, and you keep moving, and you Q&A at the end, right? Like you finish it, and then you go back and you think, oh shit, that moment where you caught me in that fucking heel hook, like what could we have done, and just like approaching it more from like a cerebral kind of fucking standpoint versus just like roll like savages and then not question what the fuck just happened. right?
That's definitely, that's funny that you say that. There's a guy, he's a black belt now. I used to train with up in New York, and he tore out a page of his journal, and one of the things that he put on in his journal was that every time that he trained, at the end of his day of training, he would write 3 things he did bad, 3 things he did good, and then the 3 things that he did bad, he would go immediately and ask a black belt or one of the older guys or one of the professors, like, hey man, I got caught XYZ whatever, can you troubleshoot it with me? And he goes, and dude, and I started implementing that. Where like now I kind of like, I do cerebral, like I walk through like, what did I do? Oh, my top game was pretty good today. Kind of, I was like, oh, my butterflies are pretty good. Ooh, that shoulder crush I did was actually pretty solid. This guy snatched my neck like I fucked up there. And then I said, then I started, how did I fuck up? Did I turn into him? Was he just beating me to the chase? I start running the movie in my mind. So it's like I'm fighting, but in my mind, going through the fight like in slow-mo, play-by-play action kind of type of thing. And I feel like my jiu-jitsu exponentially grew by just sitting down and thinking like, what did I do good? What did I do bad? And how can I avoid it in the future? Or how can I amplify the good?
Because you're practicing learning. Just listening to the Segundo podcast with like Craig Jones, and they had Josh Barnett on there.
Okay.
And Josh Barnett asked Craig, like, oh, what is it like having cameras running 24/7 in the gym? Because, you know, they have like the YouTube channel and stuff.
Yeah.
And Craig says, in the first 3 months, it was a little weird because nobody wanted to get caught. But now nobody gives a fuck, right? Everybody rolls free and you do it. And Craig made a comment of something like, don't quote me, but he said something like, now I can watch all my rolls. And because I can watch all my rolls, what I'm doing well and what works and what doesn't work well. So now he's, you know, that brain is constantly just like, oh shit, this is a position that I can work, right? That's what we were both off camera, we were talking about it. Like, jiu-jitsu now is way different than it was like 40, 50 years ago, because how much you can see, how much you can learn, and the invention of the internet is fucking crazy. Like, I can learn from Craig Jones from my living room.
What changed the game was 2020, man. The BJJ Fanatics went from like kind of a DVD company to like a DVD company.
Yeah, video streams.
Video, yeah.
You have Jiu-Jitsu X from Legion, like
but it was like just a few different. But like the 2020, that's one thing that I must admit that came out positive from 2020 was that the jiu-jitsu people were like, yo, now it's time to make money online, and they came out with, dude, every single black belt like on the planet came out with like a
and now
tutorial.
You can practice from your living room. Some friends of yours that do jiu-jitsu will come over my.
I do that now. I have drilling partners that literally I have my drilling partner. He clips the tutorial like into little pieces, puts it up on Google Drive, and I just, when I'm traveling or whatever, I have it playing in the background. So I may not be paying attention, but I'm paying attention. I just have it like little 10-second here, 20-second here, and then at the end of the week we just drill it. So I have it playing throughout the week where it's just running over and over and over and over again in my brain. I actually practice it at the end of the week. But that didn't exist. 3 years ago, that didn't exist.
It would have been impossible.
It would have been impossible. And
that's what changes the whole game for, like what we were saying earlier. Like, if someone's been doing jiu-jitsu since they're 4, and now they're like 16 years old, they're manhandling grown-ass men.
Yeah.
100%. Like if they had really good instruction, they had good coaching, it's like a competition 16-year-old guy who's like high level. He's mangling people who just started doing jiu-jitsu who are like 28 years old, who are men, and they have a sizable strength difference. They still get manhandled, you know, by a 16-year-old kid, because the kid knows, you know, more and moves with them.
Well, bro, it was a fucking interesting conversation, man.
I hope it was. I know I can ramble and talk about it.
Yeah, no, it was good, man. We should do this again, man. We'll come back. I'm gonna next week I'm gonna have some different. I'm gonna probably start kind of doing this a little bit more frequently, and maybe kind of help me, like if we bring in like bigger guests and stuff like that. That'd be. The idea is to have like different like people that are on the same wavelength. I honestly didn't know that you did jiu-jitsu, bro, until you told me.
Yeah, until we talked today, right?
Until we talked today. I thought you were just an exercise guy.
Dude, look at me. I look like I don't even exercise. People look at me and they're like, dude, this guy's so fucking little. And then you see me do shit, they're like, oh.
Oh, yeah. Like, oh, yeah, he can. Yeah, wait a minute. Yeah, he can strangle people.
I do like a fucking pull up with like a 70-pound kettlebell. I do a couple, like 3, 2.5. But with a 70-pound kettlebell, it makes me like 205. You know, I do fucking pull-ups and that shit. And, you know, people look at me and I literally one day was at the fucking gym, like lifting. And like a member of the fucking gym looks at me and they go, oh, shit. Did you just lift that? And I turned around, I looked at her, I said, yeah. She goes, you lift weights? And I'm like, damn, that's fucked up. I was like, that's fucked up, you know? I guess I don't need enough.
Yeah, man.
But thanks for having me on, bro. I really appreciate it. This was a good time. It was a nice conversation.
It was, man.
It was good.
So tell everybody how they find you, man. Like, what's the path?
The easiest way